This episode of DODTV is brought to you by the incredibly durable Morel shooting target. With many designs available, you're sure to find a target that fits your practicing style.
That's the deer we came in here after. Can't say enough about DeerCast predicting great, and it was great. Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Just couldn't be happier. This deer is one that we'll be really cherishing for a long time.
Well, this story somewhat began a few years back. You know, we're really lucky in the fact that we get to create somewhat of a history with a lot of these deer, and this one's not too indifferent. You know, at age 3.5, this was the EHD year when we lost all of our top end deer, all of our big shooters were gone. We were somewhat taking inventory and trying to figure out who made it through and which ones were going to survive and continue on. Well, we had an encounter with this particular buck and didn't really have a name for him. We weren't paying a lot of attention to him because he wasn't all that big, but he had a decent rack. You know, him and a couple other bucks were really chowing down on the biologic. And the encounter that we had was literally 200 yards maybe from where we ended up harvesting the deer. So it was kind of neat to go back and look and see that this guy, that was really start of his kind of home court area, if you will. But that's when the story really got started.
So, at any rate, the date that we had the encounter with him was October the 15th. You know, it was insignificant at the time, but it becomes somewhat more important. You know, each and every year we do quite a bit of shed hunting for us, particularly. He walks miles and located this guy, which was kind of cool. You know, he was small, but he was chewed up. There's a lot of it that's missing here, but it was neat just to be able to say that he found it, you know, and start that little history, that history lesson that we talk about, home court area and such. The following year, at age 4.5, we got some velvet pictures of him right off the bat, and we thought, oh my gosh, this thing has picked up quite a bit. I want to say he probably picked up 40 inches or more. So we were all of a sudden putting him on our radar, and we named him. We named him Little Gnarly. This was after a deer that Matt Drury had harvested. The original Gnarly was a pretty good looking buck, had quite a bit of mass, decent main beams, and some tine length, and we thought, you know what, this could be a throw out of that deer. But the similarities or the characteristics were enough that we gave him the nickname Little Gnarly. On October the 5th, Forrest and I were in that blind. I was already tagged out with the archery tackle, and we weren't certain about this deer. We thought we might have a chance of seeing him, but just went in there on a whim, to be quite honest. And I'll be doggone if he didn't show up, him and a couple other bucks, and absolutely put on the show of all shows. And I want to say it was about 30 yards from where we actually harvested the deer.
We think, looking at him, we think he's a 4-year-old. He really reminds me of the deer we called Gnarly. Terry and I were just talking about it that Matt killed a couple of years ago. So if we give him another year, hopefully it blows up like that.
So fast forwarding just a little bit, you know, that was October the 5th. Fast forward to November the 16th. We have another encounter with him. We're on the same field. We're a little bit further south, but we're in another blind. We're watching the field. This is standing beans. And lo and behold, we see Little Gnarly and also a deer we call Socks. We see these two coming straight for us.
Just a great rack.
Here they go. Well, it was a pretty cool encounter. They started to get in there fairly tight. Little Gnarly walks one way, Socks stays there, you know, works his antlers up in a licking branch, makes a scrape. Just a beautiful, beautiful show. But once again, we're taking notes. DeerCast had predicted great it was. We had fantastic movement that evening. We just took in the show and sat back and watched them. It was really a great sit. Fortunately, you know, we had 2 fantastic encounters with Little Gnarly and just a ton of pictures. We had Reconyx cameras. He was kind of a star because we had so many pictures of him, and really kind of got to monitor a lot of his movements and his activity. You know, when DeerCast was predicting that movement, it was pretty on track and on point. We would get pictures of him with regularity. With that being said, you know, we went through the winter months and then on into the spring, and as luck would have it, found both of his sides. Forrest found them both, and we couldn't be happier. This thing made a pretty doggone big jump from 3.5 to 4.5, and we knew it was him. We're certifiably 100% positive that it was him. So we were tickled that we picked them both up, or really got both sides that year. Couldn't believe the jump that he made from 3.5 to 4.5. You know, this is a really nice deer, and we were pretty pleased that we had passed him and gave him an opportunity to reach some potential that we weren't certain. You know, you never know. When you pass a deer and when you pick up the antlers, you don't know what they're going to do from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 and so on, but we were pretty happy that we'd gave him the green light. Okay, here we go. We're going to fast forward just a little bit more, taking Little Gnarly from age 4.5 to 5.5. Sure enough, the Reconyx cameras gave us exactly what we wanted. Got to see a picture of him in almost the exact same spot, maybe 30 or 40 yards from where we took him or where we killed him. We couldn't believe it. Only difference was he grew a bunch. We started compiling pictures and really looking at where he was going, and all of a sudden, this thing didn't daylight at all. I mean, he was typical for a mature whitetail at age 5.5 not to show their face during daylight. So enter DeerCast. We're going to be relying on DeerCast and relying on that algorithm and relying on that information to try and pick and choose our spots and, you know, hone in on that maximum time, or I'm going to say the optimal time when we can try and harvest this animal. Here we are still fast forwarding. I want to try and get to the final hour. But October the 11th, we had a great, and because Gnarly had not shown up during daylight hours, we didn't go to his home core area. Well, that was a huge mistake. We picked another spot, and really kicking ourselves in the tail for not going there. Well, so we advanced forward just slightly in a few days, and all of a sudden we're about to get another great. You know, we're always looking at DeerCast, looking at that algorithm, checking to see what the predictor model is saying, and it's showing another great. Well, after we missed him finally showing up during daylight hours, we're like, all right, man, we're going in here. It's almost to the day from when we had the encounter with him at age 3.5. I think that was on the 15th. And it just so happens this is on the 16th, but it's still within a couple hundred yards of where he daylighted even as a 3.5-year-old. So we're looking at it pretty hard, saying, you know what, our odds are very high. DeerCast is saying great. We missed the opportunity a few days ago. We're not going to miss it again. Let's go in there and see if we can't try him.
Here's to never missing a day of hunting camp. Because with DeerCast, you can take camp with you all season long. Get ahead of your game.
Well, not only did DeerCast give us a great predictor for that particular date, we also got a picture of him that morning going to bed in there a little after 3 a.m. And we're like, okay, we know he's in there, we know he's close. That doesn't mean he's gonna pop back out, but the fact that DeerCast gave us a great as far as a predictor, we were gonna put all of our marbles in one basket right there, and that's exactly what we did. We said, we're not gonna miss an opportunity. We missed it on the 11th. It's the first time he's daylighted on any of the cameras this year at age 5.5. We're gonna go in there and see if he doesn't show his face.
We've got one deer that we're looking for. And if he shows up tonight, we're gonna try and take him. We'll go in there and see if he don't show his face. I don't know. I'm not real optimistic because he's only daylighted one time this year. So, but you never know. Conditions are good.
Well, we go into this particular blind a little earlier than normal because it's one of those spots that's really, really tight into a lot of bedding cover, you know, where there's always a ton of does and little small bucks. And we've got a beautiful, beautiful biologic non-typical clover field there in front of us. And we elected not to take a decoy. And I know it's early, we're talking October the 16th here, but the moon waxes full on the 20th. It's the hunter's moon. These bucks are ready. The does may not be yet, but a lot of these bucks, we've seen a lot of sparring, a lot of scrape activity has gotten really, really hot. So we had been using our decoy, which we had named Joe Buck, on several evenings and had tremendous luck with it. We've had bucks just come right up to it. So we elected not to, and I did that, number one, because this was so tight. I didn't want a deer to walk out on the field and go, uh-oh, what's this all about? And I didn't want him to turn around and then try and get downwind of him or whatever. So he's also been by himself for the most part. Everything that we've seen as far as the Reconyx pictures are concerned, you know, it seems like he's been a loner, that he wasn't one of those real aggressive by nature kind of bucks. He was more docile. So I elected to leave Joe Buck at home and just go into that blind. It was his home core area. The pictures that we got of him on the 11th were really, really close to that blind. We said, let's try it. We started seeing a few deer almost instantly. We barely had gotten into the blind and a few does started popping out, and we thought, man, this is gonna shape up to be a pretty doggone good evening.
We got one little bitty feller out down there. Just waiting on Little Gnarly.
Evening is quickly starting to unfold. You know, deer after deer starts coming onto the field. All of a sudden we see a 2.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old that came out behind the blind on the downwind side. Thank goodness it's completely scent proof and they didn't catch our wind, but they did come out on the downwind side and put on a tremendous show. Literally got within spitting distance, if you will, of where our position was there. And you know, Forrest and I talked to each other at the time and said, you know what, that could be karma. What if he comes out on our downwind side there? We don't want to alarm him and let him know where we're at. So we just kept everything closed up pretty doggone tight and took on the show and said, man, this is gorgeous. Watching these deer. Had those bucks, and then another little small buck came in, and then several does. And the evening just passed by very, very quickly because they were putting on the show of all shows. Pretty easy to get tunnel vision and focus on a spot where you know he walked in, went to bed. And that's exactly what we were doing. We had tunnel vision saying, man, he's got to pop out right here. It's going to be close to where he walked in this morning. But where those other two bucks had walked out, we were taking a peek and looking pretty quickly and pretty regularly saying, okay, he could pop out back there where they did. Well, by golly, that's exactly what happened. A little spike comes squirting out. And right as he squirted out, I said, Forrest, isn't he generally by himself? And he said, yeah, for the most part. But as luck would have it, I said, there he is.
Oh, there he is, Forrest. That's him. That's Gnarly.
Man, all of a sudden that big rack pops out. We were like, holy moly. He's already within bow range. So the evening starts to shape up quite nicely. Well, immediately he starts feeding on some standing beans right there. And we had also top seeded some biologic winter bulbs, sugar beets, and radishes within those beans. But he was stripping those bean stalks and taking bean after bean. And then he finally got his head down in there. He started eating a little bit of the biologic, but he was facing and quartering to the entire time until he finally fed his way into the biologic non-typical clover. And couldn't believe it, but I wasn't about to take an errant shot. I wasn't about to take a shot where he's quartering to. We said if we didn't screw this up, he would finally and eventually give us a broadside. And that's exactly what he did. He at one point, he started to look to the south, and I had that opportunity to open the window, so I did just that. And I think he kind of heard something or whatever, but he stood there like a statue, gave us a 20-yard or a 19-yard broadside, quartering away. Just the shot of all shots on a big deer. You know, you might as well buy a lottery ticket when you get a shot like that.
It was back a hair. It was back just a little. There was a bunch of blood pumping out of this area. Well, and he was quartering away. Like it should have. It should have. Well, it passed through. There's the arrow. So I have no idea what happened. That was the first one. The second one stuck in him. Did it stay in him? Might hit the off shoulder. I have no idea unless I hit something. I don't think I did. I have no clue what happened with that first one. That's the deer we came in here after. Can't say enough about DeerCast predicting great, and it was great. You know, the moon was rising in the evenings, got cooler temperatures with a rising barometer. I pray the Lord we find him. That was awesome. Awesome. He had us tied in knots because he was facing us the whole time. Heck, he wasn't 20 yards, 18 yards, I guess.
Released the trigger, and I literally, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I still, to this day, have no idea what happened, but the arrow went way, way off of where I was aiming. This is testimony as to why you sometimes want to keep your quiver on your bow. We've shot with our quivers on our bow or I have, since day one. I've never ever taken it off, and I immediately grabbed another arrow, knocked another arrow. He stood there. For whatever reason, I don't know, he wasn't real certain as to what happened, stood there just long enough to do the exact same thing, come to full draw, settle in, and boom, the rest is history, as they say.
The second one found its mark. Thank the Lord above that he stood there long enough, quartering away, and gave me that shot, because most deer don't do that. So I was really fortunate. But with that said, while we got light, we're going to get on blood and see if we can't find him. I'm fairly certain he's done. The moon waxes full on the 20th this year, so it's coming on to where it's going to be waxing full. It's called the Hunter's Moon, and by golly, this could be the best October lull we'll see for quite some time. Let's go find him. Blood everywhere. It is a really, really thick blood trail. Both sides. That's a lot of blood. How about it, brother?
That's awesome.
He didn't go 70.
I was gonna say 70.
Downhill. Well, maybe 80.
Sweet. That's awesome. He looks pretty good laying there.
He looks good laying there. Couldn't be happier. Great deer. Thank you, Forrest, for all the work that you put into it, buddy. This wouldn't happen without good help like Forrest, Wade, Perry. It means a lot to have these guys. Great buck, just couldn't be happier. Now, we gotta get a tag on him here real quick and we'll get him out of here. You know, here we are in October the 16th. The moon waxes full on October the 20th, so it's a little earlier than normal. We usually like to see that moon waxing full a little bit later in the month. It is the Hunter's Moon, but with that being said, it was rising in the afternoon and evenings here when it coincides with their normal feeding pattern. We finally got some decent temperature where we're about back to normal or average. It wasn't a cold front per se, it was just average temperatures, and got a lot of deer up on their feet and moving. We saw 6 or 7 different bucks, 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, some 1.5 years, and then this big old dog come rolling out. Studied Reconyx pictures, a lot of them, and he's typically by himself. just has been a loner. We passed him here in this particular spot last year, and we thought, boy, we'll give him another year. He could blow into something, and he certainly did. So I just couldn't be happier. We also said that if he does it again, we were in the wrong spot last time. We said if he walks in here and goes to bed again, we're gonna be here. And that's exactly what we did. We made the decision to come here and just got lucky. I don't know what happened with first shot. I have no clue. It was dark inside the box, so I don't know if I knocked the arrow wrong. I might have, or if it was even on the rest correctly, but we're gonna go back and watch footage and see what happened there. But rarely do they stand there and take another one. Testimony to why you might wanna shoot with your quiver on. I knocked another arrow. He stood there long enough and put it back just a little bit. He was quartering away, and the rest is history. As they say, he ran about 80 yards downhill. And I just couldn't be happier. Happy camper right now. Deer season 21. Stay with us.
Well, you know, stories like that and things like that, once in a while, you'd rather be lucky than good, and that's the moral of that story. But there was a lot went into studying this deer and really kind of monitoring his movement. And DeerCast, I cannot say enough about that algorithm and the predictor model that it gave us that day and why we went there. And why we didn't go the first time, I'll never know, but he hadn't daylighted then on the 11th yet. When he did daylight on the 11th, we said the next time we get a great, I know where we're going. And that's exactly what we did. And the rest is history, as they say.
Well, standing here next to the back-to-back morel target, and because we do so much traveling and we go from farm to farm, you know, it's not uncommon to set this thing out wherever you want to in the yard. Well, the old adage, aim small, miss small, may apply. And on this thing, because on this end, these dots are all so much smaller, stay in tune all season long and try and start targeting these smaller dots. It's made of the flex back self-healing foam, which is one of the most impressive targets I've seen as long as we've been doing this, and I'm talking decades. So this is the absolute greatest target we've been around, regardless whether you're shooting practice tips, mechanical, fixed blade, it doesn't matter. Give this one a try. This is one I think you'll be impressed with.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of Deer Season 21 is brought to you by MOTV. For access to all our Drury Outdoors TV shows, head over to the MOTV app today.